Welcome, Reanimated fans, to this week's episode. We had a brief hiatus due to traveling schedules, but we're back. And we're back on this just after Halloween weekend. Gorgeous, gorgeous, like perfect trick or treating type everything, despite the deluge that happened here on the East Coast. But it was definitely. Apparently, with some of the travel concerns, I actually didn't make it in town until after all the celebrations, but it looked pretty awesome. I'm here, as always, with my intrepid co host, Stuart. Hello, Stuart.
Ahoy, HA, how are you?
Good, good. Did you get to enjoy the Halloween festivities?
Yeah. I had a couple of 3 hours of walking around trick-or-treating on Friday, so I was actually kind of worn out by the Halloween festivities. And I did there's something that's been happening in my town, which I'm very excited about, which is the opening of a new movie theater. Ours closed during COVID, and it's been a drive to go to the movies, and now we have this new movie theater. It's like a nonprofit situation, and they were showing Halloween, the original. So I went
Oh,
on Thursday night, the night before Halloween, with a friend, and we watched that movie for the first time since we were teenagers, both of us, and it was kind of laughable how
how it's scary.
how unscary it is now, but like a lot of the tropes that were established in movies like that have now just been really refined and become more nuanced, and so you it's cool to see that kind of horror again. I don't know. I always liked that movie.
Yeah, that movie is definitely a classic, and it is kind of funny when you look back at things in retrospect and how scary it seemed at the time, and
Yeah.
not as much now. Although I missed the Halloween, the real time Halloween things. I am always just so impressed by how creative New Yorkers are in terms of all their costumes and things like that. And there's like always like kind of a best of Instagram, all that kind of stuff. And of course, during the Halloween parade, which was fell on a Friday this year, they did the big massive Thriller dance,
Oh,
and
cool.
people actually like massive groups of people go and actually practice to do this, and it looks pretty amazing. So always kind of fun. So I'm sad I missed out this year, but there's always next year. And so I was, getting my horror movie on with, other things. But in any case, we have actually quite a few news items, just kind of like things that are a little bit of interest, and a lot of them just popped up like yesterday and today, so that's kind of interesting.
Huh.
But you had something that you wanted to chat about, this really cool little Discord channel, right?
Oh yeah. We so Reanimated now has a little home on Discord, in a collective of other podcasts and content creators. It's called the Brain Munchers Zombie Collective, and if anybody's interested in joining some like-minded zombie fans, horror fans, you can find that Discord. I believe it's publicly searchable, so check it out and come and say hi. So yeah, that's the Discord news. The Brain Munchers Zombie Collective.
Yeah. Um, so in other news, we talked a little bit about how the Monroeville Mall is going to be no more. Developers have bought it, but I guess there was a bit of a last hurrah in the mall in probably for like some Halloween festivities, and there was a nice little piece in the New York Times. So if you want to check it out, I definitely recommend it. But basically, it's like a film of Romero just talking about just all the different undertones and commentary that were related to that, and a little bit about how the destruction of the mall may be slightly on point. But yeah, so that was kind of just an interesting little read if anybody wants to check it out. In other terrifying news, there's two pieces of news that I almost did not include, but I'm going to anyway. But there is a like kind of a think piece about about scientists potentially creating brainless bodies out of stem cells deliberately for research and for like harvesting organs and things like that, and the ethics of doing something like that. And I have to say, even how this is being described, they do not have this capability yet. Let me just say that first and foremost. But just like the idea of something like this being discussed and kind of like batted around. I'm like, this just doesn't seem like it could. This does not seem like a good idea.
It seems
But
like a great idea to me. I mean, if
maybe
you could harvest organs for, I mean, the organ transplant list would not be a thing anymore. Like this could,
this.
in a perfect world, in an ideal scenario, this could really save a lot of lives and be great.
Okay,
In a worst, a darkest timeline, yes, it's the end of all things.
maybe that's just where my head goes, but I'm just imagining the whatever like tainted organs from this thing, and this is terrible, and I know that's not true. It's not scientific, and it's just me thinking from a horror film brain point of view or plot point of view. But and like the Jurassic Park Jeff Goldblum life finds a way kind of thing. So either the scenario where they do eventually like somehow develop brains or where those organs and things like that cause some issues with the people that they get transplanted in. Those are two just sub horror plots that I could see, you know, not happening, but just that's where my little weird brain goes. Secondly, I like there was this whole truck of monkeys from a lab that escaped and um the initial news reports went out that said that they were all diseased and not only diseased but aggressive, and of course hilarity ensues or terror ensues, and then they had to actually walk back some of the things that they were saying because as it turned out none of them were had diseases. However, they are aggressive and mean, so that's
Yeah.
still scary.
Either way, not
um
great. Macaques can be a little scary, a little aggressive. I
yeah,
mean, when I first saw this headline, it was like one diseased monkey has escaped from a crash truck in Mississippi. And then I feel like within the same news cycle, it was like, actually, it's three. And they're really angry and they're diseased. It's like, oh, fantastic. So there was a part of the news cycle where it was getting progressively worse. And I think that's when the apocalyptic stuff started happening.
right.
I'm glad though I'm glad that the lab or whoever it was like, no, actually they're fine. Don't worry about it. Except that they are still very angry.
So the next article that we saw was something in the Harvard Gazette and written by Liz Mineo. And she did an interview with Stephen Schlossman. And he like wrote this whole like the zombie autopsies, secret notebooks from the apocalypse. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. It was on like an
Yeah.
island.
And so this was also like him talking about what's like the scariest horror trope. And then talks a little bit about like a couple of the reasons why horror is so effective at like doing the things or presenting things that maybe we don't want to necessarily confront in real life. And so I thought it was like a very interesting read. And then he talks about how he wrote this sort of like that was the premise of what he did. That was the origin of his book. And so this was just like trying to take a look at it from another point of view, and then how George Romero optioned the rights to his book. And I just thought it was kind of an interesting take on it, not just from, the horror perspective, but also from the fact that he's talking about a lot of things that are the basis of the things that we tend to talk about a little bit in terms of the premise of a lot of these stories and what we can learn and what a lot of the times the directors are trying to do a commentary on. Did you happen to read it, or this came into the show notes pretty late, I would
Yeah,
imagine?
unfortunately I didn't, but it's so exciting. Well, I mean, I'm still having like belated excitement for the fact that his book was ever optioned to be a film because it was fun. It was a fun book. I don't really remember too much of it because I think we reviewed it in like 2014,
Yeah, no,
but
it's a long time ago, so I'm wondering if maybe more of something going to happen with it because of this article. Like maybe this is happening because
yeah.
the article, maybe something's happening more in it because it just seemed kind of an odd thing.
I wonder what happens to those options. Like, does it have like a sunset date on it? I don't know. I think that wraps up the news. We had we'll see if anything comes of the option, if it still exists for the zombie autopsy secret notebooks from the apocalypse. And if I still have that episode, we can re-release it at some point. It might have disappeared into the ether, but that would be cool to
Yeah,
listen to again, especially
it,
if there's a chance of it becoming a film.
absolutely. And we covered the diseased monkeys and the brainless bodies.
It's clear that
So
we've covered every significant piece of zombie news. Which is
Right.
it's weird. Like, we didn't have a podcast for the 2 weeks leading up to Halloween. I feel like there should be a lot more and maybe some project announcements that maybe we've missed. But
Probably. But I think that leads us to the next part, the feature part, where we're going to talk about the last two episodes of Daryl Dixon season three. So Contrabando and is it El Salaz again or is Salaz the Mar? Sorry.
Solaz Del Mar.
Yeah, so I am ready to jump into this. I have some thoughts, but I don't want to give too much away. Um, but let us kick it off. So basically, we're continuing the journey of Daryl trying to rescue Justina and also the saga of Carol and Antonio getting into it. Um,
Getting down and into it for
yeah,
sure.
in many ways, not just with each other, but in the sort of the inner workings of in Salaz del Mar.
Yeah.
And like I have to say, I watched these two episodes back to back. Did you?
I watched Contrabando now like a week ago plus, and then I watched the other one this morning. So the Contrabando is less fresh in my head.
Okay. So I just felt like the pacing and the storytelling in some of this felt like a reach, and there were certain things in it that I was a little. I mean, this is something you and I have talked about a lot, which is there's some things that they just ask to me a little too much of the audience to kind of like they treat these characters as if they haven't been in this world for so long,
Can
and
I just are you thinking of something one specific thing, or were there multiple? Because we might
we
we might both agree on one plot device that's used in these two episodes that is just dumb. And,
yes,
and the one I am referring to is Roberto and Antonio and any kind of schism between the two of them.
yes. Okay,
Okay.
there is that, certainly. And there is also that's the biggest one I am thinking of.
Yeah, that's just like super dumb. That's Roberto turning off his brain and being like, "Well, it says in the script that I'm supposed to be mad at you, so I'm gonna be."
Well, it's not just that, but it's the Fede Antonio schism
I
because
still don't understand what the hell happened between Fede and Antonio, and what's the deal with the wife?
yeah. But that's my point. It's like there's just sort of like things that they throw in there for the sake of throwing them in there. I also have to say, I'm very disappointed that Rick Grimes' brother did not show up in either of these that I could tell.
I mean,
I was somewhat relieved because I was like that would have been like jamming in something kind of weird there, but
like
maybe
a Cadrone showing up.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess so. That's the other part. I
The
guess you
last time we saw him was in the Channel Tunnel, and he's apparently just
hanging out
walked
in
walked
space.
into Galicia in the last couple
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah, and of course, that was the other thing. Comes across a Rubik's Cube and assumes that it's Daryl.
It's like, oh
Um,
my God, there's only one Rubik's Cube in all of
in the
Europe.
whole world, like nobody else could have put that there, right? So there's little things like that that just like really bothered me. But
You know
let's
what though? Just for consistency's sake, Cadrone randomly finding Daryl is a pretty constant through line from the last
true.
couple seasons.
That is true. You're not wrong. And so, but the thing that I did love about this, as I've loved about this entire season, which I feel like they're leaning really heavily on that, is just a lot of the film locations. Though one of weirdly at the end, in the last episode, they do this whole thing with Alcazar, which is obviously the interiors are Alcazar in Sevilla, but the exteriors really look like Alhambra, which is not in Sevilla. So I maybe I'm misreading that, but that's what it kind of looks like. I'm also like I'm not surprised because Game of Thrones got permission to film in Alcazar. But so I think they do quite a bit of filming there. But I was like, oh wow, did they actually let them film in Alhambra? But no, it was Alcazar. Have you ever been there?
I have not. I
Um,
was looking at some of those exterior shots thinking it also looked like Segovia. There's some pretty impressive fortresses there, and we know they were filming in that part of Spain.
Oh, maybe it was there. It just to me just registered, and believe me, I'm not an expert, but it just was like that is definitely. I just know that it's definitely not the Alcazar. That is not exterior in Sevilla. Like that looks like an entirely different town wherever they are. So maybe it was in one of those. And so anyway, it was just interesting that they got permission to film, and they did make pretty good use of those interiors. And man, that is like such beautiful grounds and buildings. So
Yeah, I
it's
was
kind of cool.
feeling pretty jealous that they got to run around in any of those sets. They looked
Oh, I know. It
amazing.
was like,
I was bummed that there was no after show for the finale. Like there was nothing like behind the
yeah,
scenes.
I was looking for it because specifically I wanted to know if there were like rules about filming in there. And
Don't touch
but
anything. Yeah.
kind of, well, because also they do, they have fire involved, and I'm like, how? I'm assuming that that had to be like it was very deliberate and close when they showed I don't know, like how they did it, but I'm like,
Hmm.
there's no way you're doing that in that palace. But anyway, so that was like kind of a cool thing, going to Spain, and walking around those places, and just that kind of is fun to see all these things pop up.
So in Barcelona, well, which is in what where the action in Contrabando is taking place, there in Salas del Mar, they are they never show the Familia Sagrada.
That's why I don't think they were actually there. It looks more like they were somewhere else to me. I do know that they filmed a lot in Madrid. They filmed in Sevilla, and then they filmed like Galicia and like sort of like
I thought we had said because I was in Barcelona earlier this year, and you were
they
like, "Watch
filmed.
out for Daryl Dixon. They're supposed to be filming there," and I
Well, if
didn't
they
obviously
did,
see
it was weird because they didn't really show like
much that was, yeah,
yeah.
specifically Barcelona looking. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I thought they were doing kind of that weird thing. This was another piece that I did not like about this whole particular episode, or just where they were going, is the whole thing with Antonio. Like they're showing, I know that they're trying to connect the two different narratives, but they have Daryl and Pa running around Barcelona, and then they go back to Del Mar, and Antonio is showing his time in Barcelona, and it's like the same exact places,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
and I'm just like, oh goodness, this is just really. It just felt a little awkward and choppy to me.
Yeah,
Did you
this
feel
is the
that?
episode where they set up all this like apparently overlap between Antonio and his wife and Roberto, enjoying that one park and the videos that they're making because he's not only a film buff, he was a filmographer. But then there's also a scene in this episode where Fede pulls out a picture of Antonio's wife and looks at it longingly. And I don't feel like I was ever told why that would be the case. Where is this enmity between them come from? Granted, and all of our typical announcements and warnings associated with this episode and everything we do in our podcast, but like we spoil the hell out of them. Um, Fede's still alive and will probably almost certainly come back in season 4. So maybe we'll have to wait and find out what the beef is between Antonio and Fede for another whole, you know,
Well, okay, so here's my thing. Clearly, Fede loved Antonio's wife.
or is that his sister? Like
It
we
is
don't
his
know.
sister, and it says you lost one son. I don't know what that means. Like that later, there's like a
Yeah.
comment.
Uh-huh.
Maybe it is his sister, but
And
it
Abuela,
feels,
man, she really goes back and forth. She's hot and cold, isn't she?
like it would be a little weirder if it was his sister. I think it's somebody. I think that he was in love with her, but also, why would Antonio tell him he was responsible for it? How would he even know at that point? Because everything just all hell broke loose after she was killed. Like it's just weird. Okay, I do have an answer about the Barcelona filming. Apparently, they did a couple of things in the city, like the amusement park, which I knew, and the monument to Columbus, but then a lot was outside of the town, like a neighboring town, Badalona. So maybe that's why it's not registering um, as all Barcelona all the time,
Hmm.
which I think I can imagine they probably have a lot of restrictions, and that city isn't so incredibly crowded.
Yeah.
So maybe they were very limited in sorts of like, we're going to shut down this street or that street, but we can't take you into like, the old town piece, right?
I just thought it would be cool, even if they had to film it from a weird angle,
Yeah.
to show, is it Sagrada Familia? Yeah,
Yeah,
in the
like
just in the background because
I
it's
was
so
sort of,
tall, like you can see it from everywhere in Barcelona.
and I kept looking for it too. I was like, where, like, this isn't red, but anyway, Barcelona is a beautiful city. Everybody should go. But yeah, I was hoping for more of a, I did try to, there was a behind the scenes kind of a thing that I had to find separately.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't as like, it wasn't as for, and this was specifically for the next episode, for episode 7, but it just didn't talk about as much as I wanted to talk about all the filming and the locations and the like
Yeah.
that go around.
I
You know,
honestly love that about the French ones that they would do. They'd be like, "We found this location in
right?
the Swiss Alps, and that was Greenland." I'm like, "Oh, cool!" Like, I wish they would do more of the
Yeah,
location people.
because I'm more interested. I'm like so interested in hearing about how they managed it, especially given the incredibly like dense tourist season. Because
Hmm.
they filmed in Barcelona in August, which seems nuts to me, but all good. In any case, um,
We're all over the place with this
yeah.
podcast
I know.
episode
I
so
don't care. I
far.
don't care. So
Yeah,
we're gonna, but in any case, this particular episode is really focused on these two stories. One is the Antonio's like saga with his late wife Maria, and a lot of tension, and to me, unnecessary tension between like him and Fede, and a lot of like kind of charged things that they're not going to say to each other and veiled threats, and it was just really annoying and trying. Um, the other is with Daryl and Pa, and she's like followed him to basically try to get Elena, and this is just like fine. They're running around Barcelona. They find this little troop of people.
but before we go too far into that plot line, she runs into him on the road. Again, I had made a reference to this last time we talked about how little progress he's apparently made. That he
Yeah,
left a
not,
couple days before her,
yeah,
and she's just catching up to him as he's drinking out of his leprosy water bottle.
yeah. Still not a good idea.
And then she looks at the little cartoon animal that's on there and makes a reference to hippomyopy, which
Mhm.
I have tried to find out what the hell hippomyopy is, and I cannot. It appears to be defeating my Google abilities, but it's like I guess maybe a popular cartoon character in Spain.
Hmm.
And that was on the character on the water bottle that he was drinking out of. We only saw it that in that scene. I don't think we've ever seen it again, so that might be the end of that whole fun
Hmm.
little side thing. But I was like, they put it into the script. They really wanted people to look at this water bottle and know about it. So that was curious. But so yeah, Paz and Daryl then join forces, and she's going for Elena. He's going for Justina, and they are also talking about trying to kill. Well, they come up with this plan once they meet up with the refugees, but like killing Guillermo, the Prince of Alcazar.
Yep. And but this is like, we have drama going on in both of these parallel storylines. But it felt very like the Salah Del Mar. I don't know how you felt about this, Stuart, but just the back and forth and the like drama in terms of like them trying to build this tension about what's going on. So we know that Fede knows that Roberto met Justina because his mother showed him the necklace or whatever. We know that he's got this weird thing about Carol and Antonio, and it's just like like sort of like gradually, but obviously kind of continuing escalation that just seemed like just get out, just say whatever you want to say, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Just feels like feel really stressful to watch it. And
It doesn't never felt to me very clear what Fede actually did wrong.
right.
Why everybody by the end of the show is saying he chose evil? Is it
Well,
because he participates in the ofrenda or because he tried to keep Justina out of it? And that
both because he tried to keep her out of it and then he gave her up for it. And also just continued to do it, I think, because they all have lost like family members to this thing.
at this point it's like generations or maybe a
Right.
generation or two of them giving up. Like, why is it suddenly considered bad that he participated in it? I guess I don't know. Like, to me that was not very well you know
Explained.
put
Right.
across, especially by the end of by the end of the season, where I think by the end he's just super annoyed at the Americans because he was actually quite hospitable to them when they first arrived. He
Well, he needs a scapegoat, right? Like, and he's now like done some bad things, and he's definitely trying to like he's trying to deflect probably what he did. So he's like, I have some very convenient scapegoats here.
Yeah,
But the interesting thing is though, is that this town, like the Antonio and Roberto have people that are certainly loyal to them. and this, and I have to say, like, the other part that I was really just like, oh, did you really have to do that, is the thing with the cat. The minute they showed Antonio so focused on the cat, I'm like, oh my gosh, this poor cat's gonna die. And I didn't think that it was gonna be the way it happened. I actually thought Fede was gonna do something like to hurt Antonio, like, and do it deliberately and in front of him. But it just felt like, and even the way that stuff happened and the way they're thinking about how Roberto is ill and how he's being treated, there is just a lot of like non-scientific mumbo jumbo nonsense here when they have a whole crate of drugs.
Yeah.
So this is whole thing where it's like, okay, Fede is like, his plot is to shut up Roberto. Well, why don't you just do him in versus like what you're doing? And I feel like, as weak as Roberto is, if he was actually poisoned, he probably would have died. Like, what are you doing? What kind of poison are you using that it's reversed by aspirin? Whatever. Like,
Yeah,
come
it's
on, this
apparently
is
a poison that gives him a fever, which is a weird poison too.
right.
Yeah. And it killed
Um,
the cat outright, but only gives him a fever, but that he apparently has a long time before he might die.
right. So anyway, we've got, and then the whole like the whole enemy concept between Fede and Antonio. And Antonio can't just tell Carol what happened to his wife. He has to show her. And and Roberto walks in on that, like the video of his mom dying, and it just seems really, I mean, I guess he trusts Carol enough to show her this footage, but it also feels like, if you've had this thing hanging over your head all these years, maybe you probably should have told your son about it, right?
Well, that's certainly, yeah, Antonio's great dramatic flaw
Mm-hmm.
is that he has just been holding on to this guilt. I mean, it's a pretty cool scene, honestly. I'm glad, I'm always glad when we go back to the beginning of the apocalypse, but they're like it coinciding with a terrorist attack. Uh, and I don't know what kind of like guerrilla documentary he was trying to make, but they didn't have the feeling of like a well-funded organ production. It's just him and his wife trying to interview a politician, and standing right by their car while, as it explodes.
Right.
But now we know why his face is scarred. Sadly, his wife does die and then is in the ambulance. And he's like, "Oh my God, my wife has just died." He's completely overwrought, and then you start hearing people screaming and running away. And I thought that was pretty great. I love that stuff.
Yep. So that all, like, that's my question. It's like, how would Fede have even found out um how how she died, or that he was responsible, or any of that stuff? I mean, eventually they had um they end up back in her hometown, I'm assuming, and maybe he confesses to him in a moment of weakness, or say, like, something like that. But I don't know. That felt a little bit. I mean, the one thing that it did do is show the closeness between Antonio and Carol, and then she makes some comments about lying that are pretty funny later on. Um, but it just seems such a far-fetched thing. The payoff was not worth it. In my opinion. But fine. And then we've got Daryl and Pa basically trying to rescue Elena and Justina. And so this was the other part that I was like, okay, this weird little amusement park that's an obvious place in Barcelona. They're basically taking these women that have escaped from Lofrenda, from the aftermath of Lofrenda, from the Alcazar, into this thing. It's a pretty big community. It's not exactly hidden. And they're like, we have to be quiet to stay away from notice. But I mean, it just seemed unlikely that whatever's going on in Alcazar, considering that they're supposed to know all this stuff and be so well sort of like tricked out with weapons and cars and whatever, that nobody would have noticed that there's like a whole contingent of people, like a
All right. Well,
pretty
devil's
big
advocate. Daryl and Paz are convinced that nobody is there and hasn't been there in like in dozens of years
fine.
before they get attacked by zombies, and then suddenly, oh, there is a hit squad of young ladies with crossbows and arrows. And then the other part, which is a flaw of the production, is you never really get to see what is this community in Barcelona. We know that they have this moat of zombies around their community, but we never see inside at all.
Mm.
We know that they're loyal to Alcazar, but we don't know if they ever get out of town, out of that little pocket and look around in Barcelona. So I guess I could see how there's a way that this little compound, who knows how far away it is from the other city within Barcelona.
Hmm.
Um, I could see how they could maybe get away with it if they are, as they say, being quiet and they're not shooting off guns. They're using their bows, you know. I feel like they actually developed these characters pretty well considering how little they were in the show. You've got Laya, you got Khalid. I feel like they found some actors who could get across a lot of relatability very quickly
Oh,
here.
I liked those actors. I actually liked those two characters specifically. I thought that was really good.
They were developed very quickly and very
Yeah.
well to the point where you were like, yeah, all right, yeah, we got some new hero characters, but it doesn't last long.
Yeah.
But they were better than Cooper, who was just shoehorned in and then shot with
I
an arrow.
know. I know. But at least they had a plan, and there's a reason why they went down when they did, and Khalid at least survived
Hmm.
their idea. I also liked this whole idea that there's basically almost like a moat of zombies around parts of the city, and that there's these like little points that they have to go through. To me, that was like, okay, this is kind of a cool set piece to set up. Um, but some lock picking skills would have been helpful.
Yeah, Daryl very rarely fails so epically in this show, and here he fails in a big way. Of course, they couldn't just let him take her.
Right. I do
Um,
like that they did this. I like that it was so hard and they made it really hard. So that was fine. It kind of very, I will say though, using the like, yeah, I get that that Pa wanted to save Elena, but basically she killed off all these people that were helping them because of her like, she hit the shoulder. They could have just killed the crown prince, but sorry, the crown prince, but then I guess it pays off in the end when we have the set piece at the end, but still.
yeah, I don't feel like they actually have to pay the price of this failed attack as much as they should have. Like getting into Alcazar should have been way more difficult in the last episode based on this attack and Guillermo's suspicions about the fact that it was about Elena, right? That there was a
Right.
connection. Because
Right.
they
Do you think in the heat of it he would have actually noticed this? I don't know.
no, it's unlikely, and that whole scene of him like staring at Paz is a bit over the top for sure. But they're just making this guy as mustache twirly as they can here.
Yeah. Um, what did you think of? And then the other thing that we should mention that's been happening throughout this episode, it started a little bit earlier in the season,
Yeah,
are flashbacks of young Daryl,
yeah,
running around. Definitely Merle as a young Merle and young Daryl make appearances here. And they are really, I think, going in deep about some of the motivations behind why Daryl does the things that he does. And they talk about it outright in the next episode.
yeah.
What did you think of those scenes?
Mostly they're pretty forgettable, I would say. I think that this, if you're familiar with this character as we are, do we need to see flashbacks to imagine what he's talked about his childhood being very difficult? These flashbacks, I think there must be dialogue that I'm not picking up or taking like holding on to after they're over because I'm like, yeah, there's Daryl running around in the woods and there's his dad looking for him and there's Merle being like a supportive older brother, which I don't think checks out based on conversations that Daryl and Merle had, which
Hmm.
were like, hey, you left and I had to take it. Something
Right.
along those lines, which I think is the opposite of what we're seeing here, where Merle
Right.
is saying, no, Daryl, you have to go. I'll stay and take it. And I feel like it was the opposite way around.
Yeah, and it at least that's what we knew about in the canon Walking
Yeah,
Dead.
from like season 3 when they actually had a conversation
Hmm.
and Merle was like, "Oh shit, you've got scars all over your back." And I was like, "Yeah, things got worse after you left." I'm pretty sure that is how that goes.
But we don't know exactly when that is. So this is them as young kids. Merle, I think the conversation they have later is when Merle left as like a teenager.
Yeah, and they're not teens at this point. True.
No, so I mean this is earlier on, so maybe this is like how it all just was going and eventually Merle does leave because he just can't take it anymore. Who knows? Um, and then so that I think kind of wraps up this episode, which is the big reveal that um, you know they fail at this, so they have to. they fail at the rescue, so they have to go into the next episode to see what happens.
Well, there's some other, well, it's nothing significant, but Carol is like sneaking around trying to find drugs in
Yeah.
Fede's house. Abuela catches her, and Carol, I think they must have been doing this on purpose, but making her attempts at speaking Spanish so hard to listen to that it was
Yes, this was
painful.
really this was so painful.
Poor Favor, Fede is lying, and Abuela's like, no, like whatever. I'm just I'm amazed that Abuela or Doña Marga doesn't shoot Carol in this scene because I
Yeah.
don't think anything she's doing is persuasive.
Well, it's also she's incredibly dedicated to her son.
Yeah,
She is very, like she is very suspicious. She has been towing the line like we need to do everything. He's doing everything for the safety of the town. So I just don't know that she would have reacted this way. I will say that the one clever thing that they did is talk about how sick Roberto is and that he's being poisoned
and the
and
cat is dead. El
and the
gato
cat is
muerto.
right. And she also knows that her son Fede told her to go and help with the birth and not help Roberto, and so
Yeah.
that probably gives her it makes her spidey sense tingle a little bit. So fine, but it was that was like the most awkward scene that I actually had to fast forward through. Um, and
And
then
they do at the very end of the episode sneak Roberto out of Solaz del Mar, in the back of a truck or in the back of Valentina's car, and Antonio confronts Fede to provide, and it doesn't really make sense that Fede would be like, "Yeah, Carol, you can go," at this point because he's about to search her car and is very suspicious of her, and Antonio is like, "You were a liar, and I hereby slap your face," with my rhetoric, and that leads Fede to be like, "Okay, Carol, head on down to the lighthouse. I'll catch you later."
right. Um, which jumps us into the next episode where we have the mysterious Codron suddenly pop up on the Camino de Santiago and happens upon the Rubik's Cube and has a very pensive look on his face. Like, ah, Daryl, I found you again. Maybe he isn't thinking that. Maybe it isn't as obvious as that, but at least it invokes the memory of Daryl, right? But, um, but he conveniently is going to be thrown into their path again, as we see at the end of this episode.
Yeah, but
Um,
yeah, it's really like, I mean, what did this actor get paid for this season? He has two
right.
tiny scenes, but he has to get into a lot of makeup because Cadron has been through the ringer, obviously, and he has face tattoos.
And after Carol sneaking out of Solaz Del Mar with the help of Antonio, she decides to sneak back in because Antonio has not showed up as he said he would. He had said he was going to like get smuggled out, but he does make a pretty big spectacle of himself in order to get Carol out. So in front of Fede, and he puts Fede a bit on notice, and so um, I think she's very concerned that nothing good is going to happen. And she's not wrong.
And when she eventually does sneak in and does meet up back up with Antonio, he says to her something that I think she should have been thinking the whole time. He's like, "Coming back here, you're going to spoil everything." And I'm like, "Yeah." And Valentina should have probably known this too, that sending Carol and the Lighthouse Boys back into Solaz del
Right.
Mar is going to come back on Valentina and her Lighthouse Boys.
Right.
And it feels like the most self-destructive thing that she could have agreed to let happen
Right.
because she has said earlier in the season we only go into Celeste Del Mar once a month to do some shopping,
Yep.
and here they just left the day before and they're coming back now. Managed to get by Gustavo, who's just like, sure, okay, go ahead.
Right. Though I feel like they've already put themselves slightly in danger given the interactions that they've had, and everybody knows that they're kind of interacting. So to me, the cat is already out of the bag. But yeah, they make it kind of obvious they're going back. Especially like when the things that they're like, okay, we brought some mustard. Like it doesn't, it's like, okay, kind of weird.
Yeah,
Um, so I do like, and I do wish there was a little bit more of the Lighthouse boys. They get kind of killed
they get killed
unceremoniously.
off screen. Yeah,
Yeah, and Roto and Daniel, and um, before that though, Carol and Roto and Daniel witness Antonio's torture and what Fede is doing He's like basically this is his whole big thing to deflect all that he's been doing is saying that the Americans are responsible for all the problems with the Alcazar, that they killed the Alcazar's men, and that Antonio is directly like a collaborator with them and strings him up, quarters him essentially. And they have to Carol and the Lighthouse Boys have to leave him there and until late at night, which come on, do you really think nobody's gonna notice like this thing? People are always like kind of monitoring the situation.
It does seem that way.
Um,
They have night patrols. We know this, but there also aren't a ton of people in Salas del Mar. When Fede calls this town meeting at Abuela's direction, she's like, "Look, people think you might be lying, and so you need to make it clear that you're not." And so he's like, "Fine, I'll just pin it all pin it all on the Yankees. That's no problem. Got it, no problem." Uh, there's like 30 people there, maybe 25. There's not a lot of people in this town, and clearly they had that huge fight with the Primitivos and lost a lot of people in that. So but there's not a whole lot of Salas del Mar left to govern over or protect. So I think maybe you could get away with the idea that you could sneak in at night and let Antonio down. Doesn't go that way.
right.
Lighthouse boys get into a shootout. We don't see them again before they are dead. Although I think they were killed right before the one of the culminating scenes of the episode. And
Yeah, and this is the whole episode of sneaking in. So we have while we have Carol and the Lighthouse Boys is sneaking in to rescue Antonio, Daryl and Pa are infiltrating Alcazar. Um,
they just
Basically,
get on a truck
I know, like how
where they're like, we need volunteers. We're looking for volunteers. Who wants to go to Alcazar? And Daryl apparently understands this now because his Spanish is improving. And it's like, let's get on that truck.
right, but you would imagine that they would be vetting people before putting them near the king,
You would
right?
imagine they would have staff. They wouldn't need to just get randos off the street to come in because not only are they move furniture inside the palace apparently without anybody really watching where they're going. Then later they're pouring wine at the banquet. Like
Yeah,
this is some top tier serving stuff that they're getting to do.
right.
Getting to. I mean, I don't think they're getting paid at all.
No, and also you're getting super close to these people that, hey, maybe the people that you're like stealing their family from might have a bone to pick with you or something.
Yeah.
All these people living in poverty outside of the Alcazar, and maybe like this seemed just sort of ridiculous to me as a premise.
It's super ridiculous. And they're like, make sure you wear these masks. And Paz is like, it's so that they don't have to look at the people who are serving them. And I'm thinking, it's really just so Guillermo doesn't recognize Daryl.
Right. No, totally. But the whole reason that they need these apparently extra staff members is because they're doing the matching ceremony, which also I have got a lot of questions about. So, this is the whole matching ceremony. This is the whole point of La Frenda. And they have Justina and all these women that they've collected from these lotteries. So in this case, there's what, like 4 or 5 of them? And so the whole idea is that they go up there and these randos, like I guess nobles and other people can either like step up and like match with one of them or the rest of them go and end up becoming like kitchen staff or something. And it's sort of like this is an enormously labor time security intensive operation that you're basically going and taking women from the lottery from each of these towns. And if you actually had all this power and money and guns, like why is that even necessary? But you're going to bring them here and then they become like kitchen like workers, but you're still asking for volunteers outside of this. Like, did it just seems to me this is just beyond the realm of like this is asking a little too much. Did you feel that way too?
Absolutely. It makes very little sense that they have all these resources, but they're not actually taking those from their communities. They're just taking these 6 chicks once a year, and that's the entire tithe. Like
Right.
I don't think any feudal organization has ever existed just on slavery, which is what this is.
Right.
They would need to be taking all the medicine and all the other stuff that
Right.
they've got to.
And maybe they are, but they don't talk about that. And then the king talks about how this is to keep their population going and whatever. Well, I mean, not to be dark, and it is very dark even what they're doing, but you could imagine a Handmaid's Tale situation where
Hmm.
they've got all these people under their thumb, and why would they even need to do this? This feels like very, very odd. And so I was just very like I was like, wow, this is just to me. There's just so many like holes in this kind of
Yeah.
idea and this story.
This is a failure of good world building where they've
Right,
created this like evil thing that somebody is doing, but not explained why
right,
it's necessary.
right.
Because yeah, I mean, you look at this palace, you look at the opulence that they've got. People are knocking on this door all the time trying to get in there, I'll bet you. And I'm sure some of them are single women who would like to be there, you know,
Yep.
probably. So you don't, none of this is necessary.
Because you would
Um,
definitely have people that are looking for safety.
yeah,
And people do desperate things when they want to be safe. And so there's probably a way to do this that you wouldn't be caught, but maybe that's the deliberate thing is that you're causing fear in these communities, but it
it's
still feels like you
certainly a
would,
deliberate thing, but it feels very manufactured for the
it
story.
does, and it feels like you would be creating a lot more ill will and danger for whatever like system you're trying to set up by doing it in this way,
Yeah.
as opposed to asking for volunteers. This just seems just weird. So in any case, the whole point of the matching day is that they dress all these women up in fancy dresses and basically put them out on display for other people to like for these noble men, I guess, to match with them or not. And in the meantime, they've got this whole weird marionette of walkers set up. I will say, as far fetched as this was, and felt very like um, let them eat cake kind of a point of view.
Yeah, this is big
Um,
time Romero vibes.
yeah. The I will say the costuming and the makeup for the Walker marionettes was pretty good.
And the facial expressions
Yep.
of the zombies. Yeah, I
Like that
wouldn't want to
was
watch this show. I certainly want to sit with my, I wouldn't want to sit with my back to the stage like the king and
no,
queen are.
no, definitely not. And it still also seems a little like this seems like a bad idea if anybody gets out, which is ultimately what happens. Um, and especially when you're inviting rando workers into
Hmm.
your
And who
your
have
listing.
swords. He's got his giant switchblade sword with him. He's
Mhm.
apparently just been able to bring it on into the palace. Nobody cared.
Yep.
Because that's how, also, like, when he opens the curtains on the marionette show, a little, this is kind of later on in the episode, all the ropes are cut, every single one. How did he do that all at once without getting bitten by any of the ones he was, otherwise, because they're spread out over the whole stage.
He's just that good,
He's
Stuart. He's
that good.
really fast.
Yeah. Maybe he just threw his sword,
He
but he's
might.
got it later. Either way, it's crazy. I mean, it's kind of the outcome you want to see. Anytime anybody's using zombies for entertainment, we see this all the time. Their entertainers turn on them.
Yep. And in this case, so Justina gets matched, so she sits down with this guy,
She
and
purposefully tries to get
she
matched.
does. She does.
What do you suppose that's all about? She's like, I'll have a better chance of escaping as a fiance to
Yeah.
a lord than as a cleaning lady.
Yeah, and she was able to get a knife up her sleeve. She's not very subtle about that either. You would think somebody would have noticed her doing that. And I kind of doubt that they're just going to let one of these women that's been like basically hauled in under duress and nobody's going to notice that she puts a knife in the sleeve
No,
of her dress. It was
I
like
feel
so
like they don't
obvious.
get invited right away to sit down at the dinner table and eat steak. I think they would probably be sent to like a conditioning, like
Right.
the Red Center in Handmaid's
Exactly.
Tale. Yeah.
But in any case, that's what they do here, and hilarity ensues after Daryl gets the marionettes all cut down, and they jump into the main fray, and they kill a lot of the nobles. And there's definitely a little bit of a like, hey, they brought this upon themselves, and kills a lot of the nobles, kills the king and the queen, very like brutally. And then the rest of the guests are kind of like running throughout the palace. And, Justina runs to like a little inner sanctum with the guy that she was with, and gets rescued by Daryl. And then,
She does try to, take him out, but he's kind of expecting it, I guess.
right.
And is about to, it has the upper hand before Daryl arrives. And meanwhile, Paz has found Elena and very easily just walks into her room and then meets her son, which is a new development. But Paz is like, "Oh, I understand now why you didn't want to leave. I get it." it's cool, everything's cool. But then one of the guards arrives. Paz kills him, but then gets knocked out by Guillermo, who very stupidly is like kind of lording it over Paz. He's like, I remember you now. I almost killed you. I tried to kill you once. This time I'm gonna succeed, and you're gonna be reunited with Elena, and I'm gonna put her head on the
Yeah,
one of the posters of my bed. And he's not like, where's Elena at this moment?
I know.
As he's talking about killing her. So it's no surprise that she stabs him right through the chest or the back.
Yep.
Um,
I guess my thing about Elena and like um like the whole thing where Guillermo's like surprised, like this starts back, I mean this has been sort of like the undertone the whole time, but when he sees Pa during the rescue attempt, the first rescue attempt, and then this whole like he says these things to Elena like I gave you everything, and it's like okay, I was like you can't really make somebody marry you under duress and think that they're gonna be okay with it,
yeah,
right?
especially
Um,
when she is not into guys, as it turns out,
right,
dude.
but
Maybe
this
maybe
is
do your homework.
and this is the other part of this whole thing, as you and I were saying. I am sure there would have been people like just so excited to volunteer
Yeah.
for this versus holding somebody under duress. But anyway, I digress. So that is very satisfying though to see him get killed by both Elena and Pa, and she takes care of the real dirty business because I think it's probably harder for Elena to do that. And so that's kind of that happy ending is that she and Elena are reunited and they're gonna take Elena's son. And Elena had already decided to go with them even before they killed Guillermo. So this actually takes that out of the running. Plus, with the king dead and the nobles dead, hopefully nobody's gonna come after them. And then,
Yeah, I feel like that part of the storyline is a little too neatly done. Like, what,
yeah.
Daryl releases some zombies into the palace, starts one fire, and that's the end of the Alcazar kingdom.
Well,
It's over.
yeah, there's got to be more to that, and well, we'll talk about some other part of this, the things that they have not wrapped up, which I'm guessing will happen in the next season. But this is a bigger organization. I'm sure there's somebody that's going to step in, and we haven't yet met them,
Well,
probably.
yeah, power hates a vacuum anyway, so
And we
it's not.
haven't seen everybody here. I was a little surprised that they didn't do some kind of intro with who that would be, but they didn't.
That's true. Well, yeah, it's going to give them free reign for season 4.
But this gives them like the full Elena and Pa is going to stay, they're going to stay in the little amusement park refugee camp, and then Daryl and Justina go back to Solaz Del Mar to see what's going on, and he tells her she's coming with him and Carol, like her and Roberto, and but before they can do that they have to like basically do a daring rescue, and
But hold up. Before we get to back to Solaz Del Mar, because there is a travel montage.
oh yeah.
And I know that usually we can talk right over a travel montage, but there is a stop so that Daryl can have a flashback while he's gassing up the motorcycle.
Hmm.
But before that little interlude is a Miles Davis song, which they must have paid
A
pretty
lot of money for that. Yep.
pretty good money for. I was like, what is going on right now? Why are they're spending this much money on this little interlude? But I thought that was pretty crazy. Yeah, so but though it's like a really beautifully shot, like there's a lot of beautiful shots. That whole bull statue on the top of the mountain was really beautiful. I think they really enjoyed this travel montage of Daryl and Justina on the back of a motorcycle riding through Spain here, and throw out some stacks for Miles Davis to play. What is it, Adagio something something, one of his more recognizable songs.
Yep.
But then when they eventually get back to the lighthouse and she runs inside yelling for Roberto, I'm like, Daryl, where is your spidey sense right now? Like the
Yeah.
door's wide open, there's nobody around. But yeah, it's pretty predictable that this is not going to go the way they think.
Yeah. And of course, Valentina's been injured. They take out the men that have basically been holding her hostage.
Two guys we've never ever seen
Ever
before.
seen.
I was like, who? Oh, is there another faction that they're introducing? No, these were apparently Solaz Del Mar guys, but we just never seen them. And I
And
thought that that was an odd choice.
and Carol, after rescuing Antonio and they're doing smoochy smoochy, they get hidden in one of the houses and they do a secret backdoor exit, but then they like trust one of Fede's main people. And I'm
Well, no, it's Gustavo. It's
yeah, but
famously a guy that we thought was going to be a good guy who would die during the show and hasn't. And so he's defeated the Deadpool odds completely.
and they just start bringing this up, but his wife's ill, he keeps getting medicine
They
from
had
Fede.
mentioned that a couple episodes
Yeah,
ago. Yeah. So what I did like about the way that they did this Underground Railroad thing was first they go to Alba's house. Alba, who was saved from the ofrenda by Justina. So she's got a debt to pay. So she's like, "We'll save you guys." Then she takes them to the basement in the tunnel, and there's Jaime, the drunk guy who also lost a daughter to the ofrenda and who was being tortured earlier on in the season. I don't know if you remember that guy.
I do.
So they were like they're trotting out these characters who we may or may not remember in the case of Jaime. He had one or two scenes. So I guess same with Alba. But I like the fact that they were like, okay, here's our friendly network of Solaz Del Mar people. And then you run into Gustavo, who saves their life or helps them out with some zombies because Fede has been like, let's kill, let's make sure that they don't get away, release the dogs, he calls them, but it's really just their zombies in cages outside the town. But he's done that to, like, I don't know, stop Antonio, Carol, and the Lighthouse Boys from getting away. And I guess it kind of works because then Gustavo, he has a great look on his face as he kills a zombie. He's like, "Come with me, I'll protect you," and he looks really conflicted. And I
Hmm.
did not read into that at the time, other than like, oh,
I knew what was
he's
gonna happen.
betraying Fede, is what I was thinking that face was for. But no, it
Uh,
wasn't. He wasn't. He was betraying Antonio and Carol.
yep.
So we see him taking some boxes of medicine and then leaving and looking a little chagrined. But then, like, one scene later, or two scenes later, he's like marching Fede through the streets in manacles. So Gustavo clearly has some loyalty issues. I don't know.
Yeah. So it ends up with the big, sort of confrontation in the town square.
It's a pretty cool set piece, I would
It
say.
is. I mean, the Lighthouse Boys are basically tied to Roberto, who's been blindfolded. They're dead. And then they're bringing out a bunch of walkers to basically kill Carol, Antonio, and Roberto.
I don't feel
And
like Fede has thought this through. He's like, yeah, where are the people? I thought this was a public execution. They're all inside their houses looking out into the plaza.
right.
But I'm like, how are you going to come out of this looking like a good guy, Fede? I feel like you're feeding some people who have
Hmm.
lived here their whole lives to the zombies.
And people
And
that
they
they
haven't,
that are well liked too.
yeah,
It's
and they
not like
haven't really done anything wrong other than question your honesty.
right.
Like,
Um, So there's a big thing. Like Carol and Antonio and Roberto, like they're trying to unbound Roberto, and Carol's like, doing her Carol thing. I will say again, I do think that she's capable of totally dominating the situation. But of course they've got to do the whole thing where, Daryl shows up to have his mad sharpshooting skills come in
I don't know
handy.
if this is like a Melissa McBride getting a little older, or the way that they're writing Carol for this season. She looks really pathetic in this scene.
She does
And
not look like her normal fighting self, and it's a little bit I don't love it honestly because I think she's a badass, and even if she was kind of we've seen that she's had some physical like injuries this season and things like that. Maybe they're trying to play on that, but she was totally capable of taking out this many zombies, especially with like another person.
yeah.
But that's
Granted, they don't have weapons. Alba does throw down a knife.
yeah,
Sergio shoots it away. Um, but they have the chains that the zombies are all attached to, and I feel like maybe we haven't seen Carol do this, but we've seen other characters take a
pop off their
chain
heads,
and kill,
right?
yeah, crush a zombie's head with the
Or at
chain.
least immobilize them, like to get them to make them a less of a threat.
Yeah, it just feels
Um,
like they've defanged Carol a little bit so that she can have this romantic relationship
right.
potentially.
But what does that say? That
I
she has
know,
to be weak
like
to have the romantic
it's
relationship? Is
one
it?
or the other. Or
Um,
or yeah, or it's the result of her head injury from the beginning of the season. But either way, I'm not. Yeah, I'd rather see a badass Carol who also gets to have the guy,
Agree. And we saw that a little bit when she was with
the king.
the king.
But she was always 1 foot in on that one. I don't know why.
True. And then anyway, Daryl shows up, helps take care of business. Justina shows up and she gets to actually kill a zombie and
Justina's up showing. That's not a
yeah.
word, but when she shows up and starts walking down the street and suddenly everybody's shooting the zombies around her. Oh, I
That was
love
pretty
that.
badass.
I love that choreography.
That
And then
was
she
really
just
good.
stabs one of them in the head to show that she's not incapable of taking care of business. And oh man, that was really cool.
It was. And so our heroes prevail and she exposes Fede and they take him
Exposes
off and
him.
with
For,
his mother is like also like she hits him and she's like, "You're a liar." And like
yeah.
it's a little, I don't know. It with that, like I know his mom has a soft spot for him, but
What
like
did he lie about though again? Is it that
about
because
Justina
he
that
said that she was taken or that she left of her own
he said that she
volition?
volunteered, she did not, and he basically like gave her life away. And no matter what you might want to say about his mother, she's like family, and so the fact that he did this is, and not just that, but he lied about how the whole ofrenda was happening, so he's been basically stacking the deck. So it's like two
Yes, but
sides,
this
I
is
guess.
what is expected of everybody in this town. Why would they be
Right.
upset about it happening to him? Like, I don't, that doesn't compute for me.
Yeah. So anyway, they lock him up, and then we've got Carol, Daryl, Antonio, and Roberto, Justina, all basically heading down to the boat to get ready to go. But of course, we have to have like a final showdown between Fede and it's interesting to me that he goes after Daryl versus Antonio because it feels like his animus is more towards Antonio, though
This
he kind of
guy, he's confused about what he wants, but
right
he does convince Abuela Doña Marga to let him out of jail. He's like, "Hey, you know what? I'm your only son, the only one you got left anyway." And
puts it down.
she lets him right out of jail.
And in any case, I do like how when he's about to kill Daryl, um, Carol basically jumps him, and it's just like he's done for. But of course, the boat gets like blown up in the aftermath of this, and
They must have had so much ethanol or whatever it was
yeah,
on that boat because yeah, his gun goes off as she jumps on him, and what a lantern
something
lights
falls.
something on fire, and then it's just that boat is never gonna have a chance. It's over.
So I did see the behind the scenes for this, and that was one thing that they talked about a lot, that apparently that boat and everything to do with the boat was incredibly like labor time intensive. There was like weather was getting in the way. The boat was very expensive, and I would imagine whatever you had to do to keep it down there was just expensive, and it was a hard set to shoot around. And apparently they were all overjoyed when they got to actually blow up the boat.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I would hope they got their money's worth out of that set because they filmed there, what, 4 or 5
yeah.
different scenes.
Yeah, but and of course, the boat blows up, and who should see the flames from a distance but Kodran. And so, that's kind of the end of this, which is that they're now don't have a way to get home, and so I guess we'll have to find out what happens to them the next season. And when they reunite with Kodran, let's see what he does. But to me, one of the big things they just kind of like didn't do anything with, which I'm sure that they're going to revisit, maybe not, but the basically the faction that attacks the Salaz Del Mar, with all the wild people, like nobody really explains that entirely or what.
they they were never that well developed. I mean, we talked
No,
about
that's
that.
what I'm
I
saying.
think
Like
I think this show is considering them to be handled. Like they're all gone,
that's it.
which is
But
crazy, right?
some of
Because there
them
were
drove
also
off though.
some of them were on a mountain across the valley firing catapults of zombies into the town.
Right. Like they
In
didn't
theory,
all.
those guys could still be out there, but I mean,
Um,
granted, they lost like 60 of their people, and who knows how many of them there were to begin with. But yeah,
so
I think the Primitivos are done.
I don't know about that, but I do like maybe they become their friends. Who knows? Um,
Hmm.
But where do you think that they're going to film next? What do you think they're
I
going to
kind of
film?
hope we never find out. I think it was a real bummer that we knew they were going to Spain this season when
Mm,
they were in England at the beginning, and then they just kind of did a one episode Stephen Merchant sacrificial lamb maneuver.
yeah.
It'll probably stay on the Mediterranean, but who can say? And I did like the speech that Daryl gives to Carol in the beach scene before Fede shows up, where he's just like, "I've been running away my whole life." This is him tying in all of his flashbacks, I guess, because he was told by Merle, I think, to run away or get out of here. I've been running from things my whole life, and I'm worried that when I go home, I'll just hear that voice and want to run away again. And Carol's like, "Oh, I'm sure it'll be fine." Um, but he's also like, why didn't I leave France when I had a chance? Why did I get in that fight in Maine and get thrown on the boat? And I think it also ties into what Justina's asking him in on their bike ride, where she's like, why did you do this? You risked everything and you don't know me, and like this is a crazy amount of risk. And his answer is very Carol
Hmm.
earlier in the season, where he's like, look, I want you and Roberto to have a good life together. I don't think that's in the cards for me, is what he or something along those
Yeah,
lines is
something
what he
along
says.
those lines.
I think that's really defeatist, and it does feel though kind of consistent for how they've been writing Daryl. He never seems to be able to. What he's had Leah, who was a very challenging relationship, and he had Isabel.
No, but he also had
Oh God, yeah,
uh
Connie,
Connie.
but they never actually hooked up. They just were flirting a lot.
They were, but she's still around. Just saying. Um,
Apparently, he's not even thinking of Connie.
no,
So,
no, he's not. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens here. I did think that they missed an opportunity to have Carol talk about like part of the reason why Daryl and Carol bond is because of the trauma that they both had in their lives and the trauma that they had um, before everything happened, before they met, before the zombocalypse. And both are victims of domestic violence, like an enormous amount of it. And so it was interesting to me that even though she's giving him these sort of like platitudes or just saying like maybe you'll feel okay at home and whatever, they don't ever, I mean, they've done it a little bit, but they don't ever really have an open conversation about that particular like aspect, which is part of why they're so close. So I would like to see that maybe in the next season. And so that I think that would be very interesting to see is to basically have them both actually talk openly about what happened to them. Because but maybe that takes the mystery away from it. But I
hmm.
thought that's where they were going with this when he starts to talk, and I'm like, oh, is this going to be where they actually I mean, they talk about it in veiled ways very early on in The Walking Dead, because Daryl knows exactly like what she's been
Yeah,
through.
in season two, though, he's actually kind of mean to her about it.
Right, right,
But at the same time, he's like really trying to find Sophia for her.
right.
But
But
he's
that's
also like, you're
why.
pathetic.
But also like the fact that you know, like as a kid that came from
Hmm.
that kind of household and not being protected, viewing the parent that's not protecting their kids or that's like leaving them in the path of that is probably a pretty triggering event for him. So,
Yeah,
but anyway, I was curious. I was like, oh, maybe they'll really utilize this to have them talk openly about this for once, as and maybe that gets them into further into like whatever journey they're going. And they didn't do that, but they did at least have him talk a little bit about it because I don't think he's ever voiced this before. So,
yeah. Do you
uh,
have a prediction though on where they might try to keep telling this story next season?
I think it's still Spain, and maybe they keep it there. I don't think they're going to go to yet another country. I
Uh,
guess there's room for like a boat or some way where they then get shipwrecked or waylaid, but I
yeah,
don't know that there's like a ton of options other than to keep kind of making them their way.
there might not be. I
I
was
mean, they
kind of
could, I
hoping
mean, maybe they end up in like Algiers or something. I don't
keep going south. Hopefully that isn't where they go, just because it's actually, I think, further away from the US on some level. But
right.
what I was hoping is that maybe they could get to the Canary Islands, like in Apocalypse Z,
Yeah.
or the Azores, where they'd have to switch to Portuguese. But at least it's like incremental progress home. But I agree that they have to start in Spain. That's where Codron is, after all, and he's apparently maybe it's actually the Codron show.
It could be. So I guess we'll have to wait until next season. But I have had fun watching this and talking about it with you and venting about my little nits related to it.
Yeah,
And I,
there were times this season felt pretty unwieldy, like a little janky, but I think I was fairly happy with it when it by the time it
yeah.
ended and some of those important conversations that started to happen.
Yeah, and I do. I mean, look, I love the set. I love the set. I love that there's like, these little groups of survivors in different parts of the world, trying to make it in the way that they can. I guess, you and I always want to see a little bit more of the minutia about how that works instead of like, I mean, even in like the refugee camp in the little amusement park, I would have liked to have seen, well, how do they like filter all this water, or
Hmm.
how are they feeding all these people? But I know that that's not what everybody wants to see, but all good. And and that leads, even the things with the Alcazar, it's like, well, how do you keep that large of a group of people and that much of a space going and secure? And and you've also created this like incredibly dangerous situation with the ofrenda. um I guess they answered a little bit of that with the sort of moat of zombies around the little city piece of it, but those are the pieces that I maybe would be hopeful that we get to see in the next
We
season.
never get to see those in The Walking Dead,
I
HA.
know, I
It's
know, I know, but
never
a
happened.
girl
Except in Alexandria, we got to see some of that.
a girl can dream.
Yeah.
But anyway, Kudran is definitely going to be front and center, I think. And yeah, but it's been fun talking about it with you. And I think what they were saying is, I mean, we know that season four is the last season, so of Daryl Dixon. So I guess they're going to have to figure out how to wrap it up, and whether that gets them home and they do a happy ending like Rick and Michonne and reunite. I would like, honestly, like what I'd really love to see is like reuniting Daryl and Carol and Rick and Michonne. That would be
That
kind of nice.
that would be a cool show if they just do one season, a mini series season of that. I mean,
Yeah,
haven't we read recently that Andy Lincoln is considering a
yeah. But
return?
but I don't think that there's any commitment yet. He's
No.
considering it. So, but anyway, this was kind of fun, and looking forward to closing this chapter and moving on to something else.
Indeed. Well, this has actually been a fairly lengthy discussion of Daryl Dixon, the final two episodes, but we had a fair amount of news and it was two episodes. But that brings us to the end of this season. If you've got thoughts about these two episodes of the show, the season in general, please let us know. Reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can, as I mentioned before, meet us over at the Brain Muncher Zombie Collective on Discord. And I'd be happy to chat with folks there too. Or you can find the rest of our episodes online at reanimated.podbean.com. And we will be back again very soon. Hopefully, our hiatus days are behind us for a little while. And I don't know exactly what we're going to be talking about next, but I can guarantee you it's going to be pretty cool.
Indeed. Thanks for listening. Until next time, I guess just enjoy all things reanimated. Talk to you soon. Bye.